Hi, this is another iOS tutorial, and today I will be talking about delegates, protocols, and passing data between view controllers. So I'm just going to start by reading the definition of the delegation pattern. So in software engineering, the delegation pattern is a design pattern in object-oriented programming where an object, instead of performing one of its stated tasks, delegates that task to an associated helper object. There is an inversion of responsibility in which the helper object, known as a delegate, is given the responsibility to execute the task for the delegator. Essentially, you can think of this as, for a real world example, you might have a boss, and then the boss has a secretary, and the secretary is delegated certain tasks from the boss. That's essentially how it works. It's very simple at a basic level. And here I've kind of drawn out how the code works. First, you make sure you go through the pointers and type ID tutorial before doing this one. But because first you need to maintain a pointer to this delegate object in some way. And you'll see how we do that in the coding example. So, because if we don't have a pointer to that object, otherwise we can't really do anything. I mean, we can't communicate with it, basically, if we don't know where it is in memory. And then from there, all we have to do is make sure this delegate conforms to certain protocols. This object has to conform to certain protocols. In other words, contains certain methods. And then we just activate those methods, and then the delegate performs the work. Pretty simple overall. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go into some code to explain it. And now I made this example as no more NSLog this time. It's just we have a view controller here and we have a view controller here, and my goal is to pass the data from this text field into this label. So when we run it, it goes next to you if I type in hello world, pass data, it's in there. So the label's a little clipped, but that's okay. Not important for what we're doing. So basically, normally you could use prepare for seg for this one, but the issue is with this back button here, there is there's no prepare for seg for the back button. So we need to use a delegation pattern to do this. So basically how it starts is the delegate, this first view controller is the delegate of this one. So this view controller is going to act on behalf of this next view controller. Okay. So first of all, let's look at our next view controller.h. There's a couple of key definitions here. First, we have to have this here, and we're just basically defining a protocol. And what we're saying with this protocol is that some object here, this object is going to conform to it. That means it's going to implement this method. And here, there's two kinds of methods. There's optional methods, and if we move this up here, it then becomes a non-optional method. We can leave it here because I do have it, so it doesn't matter. And here, then we just go to the interface and we have our just an IB action property from very early on. That's just to interact with the UI. And then here we have property ID delegate. And remember, ID is a pointer. And this means that this object conforms to this up here. More specifically this. So we get, this allows us to store the object that we're going to use to delegate tasks to. So that's critically important to the overall execution of the program. And how this works is, if you look, when we click pass data back, self.delegate executes the print something method and just send it self.data in our text field .text. Okay, and then I pop the navigation controller, we're good, and then we're golden. Okay, so what do I have to do in this view controller, in the delegate? Well, nothing here, but what we do have to do is we have to implement this protocol, because now we've made it mandatory, especially. So we implement this protocol, and now when it's called, it will set label text equal to the string that is sent. It's equal to this argument. And then that label text, when it appears, we set the data equal to that label text. So we set our label equal to that. And that's how it works, generally. There's one more preparation thing that this needs to do to work. So if you look at down here, when we do prepare for seg, right before we move to the next view controller, we get our pointer next controller. This is our pointer next, and we get our next view controller, and we find the delegate property, and we set that property to self. So in summary, now this object is contained within this property, and that allows us to interact between the two. Okay, so quick run through. Number one, you have to pass myself to that object. Okay, if I want it to be able to interact, so I pass the object to the delegate property. Then we implement all these stuff here in there, and in here we just get that object again, and we just call a method on it. And then we go back here, and it will implement the method. Easy enough, but it's a little bit, we're going back and forth quite a bit here. So it's a little more complicated than some of the earlier examples. Hopefully I've cleared it up for you. So make sure to take a good look at this because it's a common thing you have to do. It's a common design pattern. And